Now, from the historical perspective, we are moving on to a more model-based take on how to build a sustainable and climate-resilient future. Sergey Paltsev, he is the lead modeler in charge of the emissions projection and policy analysis model of the world economy that the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute for Technology, has developed. He is also a deputy director of the MIT Center for Sustainable Science and Strategy and a senior research scientist at the MIT Energy Initiative. And he has actually been sitting on the first row all day as part of the expert panel. Now it's time for him to step onto the podium and into the spotlight to enlighten us. So please welcome Sergey Paltsev.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I always like to come back to Trondheim, to NTNU. First of all, a lot of thanks to Asgard Thomasgard, who keep inviting me. And he knows that, well, sometimes a little bit hard to navigate because I can say things which people may not like, but well, somehow he decided to bring me back. So be prepared. So I'm setting the expectations right. And well, I already heard one statement, oh, this energy conference is not as optimistic as before. Well, in the country, that wonderful country where I live in, if you're going to hear current discussions in that country, you will feel this is extremely optimistic conference. And so it's all in the perspectives, so where we're going and how to assess things. So what I will try to say in my 6 minutes, remaining 6 minutes, and clock is ticking over there, is try to tell you what we are thinking, how to move to resilience, how to create more resilient world. And this particular diagram we created for one of the projects where we work with one part of the city of Boston, well, particular part, where we were trying to talk and work with the local authorities. So they ask a very simple question, okay, well, are we resilient? How do we make sure that we are prepared? And first thing which we have found out is that, well, they have some tools, some understanding. Well, what about the sea level rise, for example? Or what about how they can decarbonize buildings? But there is nothing which actually looks at that in the integrated fashion. And so just to give you one example, well, that particular part of Boston, where Logan Airport is sitting, Boston Airport, is connected by 2 tunnels. And so if something happens to those tunnels, well, you are in a really bad shape. But there is not really a comprehensive plan, okay, what to do or how to avoid that and how you're going to deliver goods. So, well, the airport may be still running, well, even with the expensive jet fuel prices, as we have learned. But if you have no access to the airport, well, then you need to be prepared. Another thing which we have learned, and kind of we also have done that in Lithuania, in Kaunas with our colleagues there, is that, well, you need to work more and more with local authorities, with local entrepreneurs, because so far we have been doing, and we have been doing that for many, many years, and some of the colleagues here are doing that as well. We are trying to understand, well, what are the national strategies? How you provide incentives for doing something which is going to lead to decarbonization. And now we are more and more in the area how you incentivize the local decision making. So in other words, bring the power back to local decision making, and that's extremely important to create resilience because local authorities knows better what really matters, where you need to be looking for. And yes, you need support from the global and a lot of interactions, which I'm not going to have time to go into many, many details, but we need to shift the focus much more to local decision makers. And well, by doing that, we have done certain exploration. So this particular diagram we created for our project with US Department of Energy, where we have another project where we're looking at the vulnerability of particular port. In this case, port of South Louisiana, which is sitting in Mississippi River, which is extremely important port for agricultural trade, for energy trade, for other things. And we were trying also to answer the question, well, is that port resilient? How to increase resiliency for the future events. And well, we are trying to also link to other threats, because it's not just about the port, it's not just about the transportation, it's about many, many other things. So just to give you one example, so we had a presentation from DNV, and if I understood correctly, the message was, well, if we are looking at the energy security, well, that's good for energy transition because we have less emissions, at least kind of that's what my understanding of that chart. But is it true the other way around? Well, if we are moving in the world where we have one country which controls 75% of solar manufacturing, similar numbers for batteries, similar numbers for electric cars, and it's not just the production. So I've been in another country where it's a lot of residential solar, and we were talking with the Ministry of Energy, and he said, you know what's my worry? Well, my worry is that solar in every house, because that solar has inverter, and that inverter is produced in one particular country. And I've heard recently about the commercial dispute in another country between the producer and those who has those solar, and well, whatever was the reason, and whoever didn't pay enough money, but that inverter producer shut down all the inverters. Okay, how you put that as an energy security into your projections? And I can go on and on and on. So I had a presentation with the lithium company, one big company. I'm not going to name the name of the country. You can guess where that is. And I showed you, oh, your projections, look, the world needs lithium. You're in a very good shape. And we did the projections, who is going to buy all that lithium? And immediately CEO of that company pointed, yeah, but that's a problem. Look who is buying that. We have only one buyer, and you know what that means. So the point, whenever you're trying to get the resiliency, you need to take a lot of different dimensions. And the point which I'm trying to provide with this particular diagram is you need to have the tool which is going to quantify this. So in addition to telling you nice stories, and again, I'm almost out of time to tell you the nice stories, so I'm not going to tell you all the stories which I wanted to tell. But the point is you need to make sure that you also have a tool how to quantify things. And that's exactly how we work with many companies, and a lot of energy companies, and well, you know all the names, well, name the big company, and kind of we are working with them, try to understand what are the implications, how to measure. In fact, I've spent the last 2 days in Oslo with your Ministry of Energy, who have asked me a very simple question. Well, we've heard that renewables are the cheapest way how to produce energy. Is it true? If we are going to take a look at the system-wide, look, what are you going to do about projections of electricity prices in the future? Are they going to up or down if we have more renewables? Well, if I would hear your fantastic, optimistic questions, it looks like we will have cheap renewables into the future, and that is going to lower electricity prices. Unfortunately, in our very detailed analysis, we have the opposite answer. So the answer, it depends, because there are a lot of things which may affect the world. And somebody from Yara said, oh, well, we need more renewables. Well, I have a bad news for you. You're going to pay more for the more renewables, not less. Maybe, maybe not. So that's why we need something to quantify, and that's why where the modeling is extremely important. So I'm almost out of time, but what I want to do is to make sure that we are looking at all these trade-offs. We need to make sure that we are moving from this linear to circular. So we had that presentation. I fully support that. But I want to finish not on this. I want to finish on some optimism. And why is that? It's we need to have more places like NTNU. So I've heard that phrase today, that you are the technology capital of Norway. Great. So that's exactly what I would like to hear, because we need more technologies. Despite the statement that we already have all the technologies for energy transition, we need more technologies. We need to get clever. We need to make sure that we are bringing all these technologies, which we are currently working at AI. I like especially this one. We haven't mentioned AI too much in this conference. Well, if it would be in the US, that's the only thing which we will be talking about. But mind the gap, because that's important. where's that gap between the hype and the reality of the AI, and how much we will be able to capitalize and what's the impact. Again, there are many, many fantastic inventions like, well, you know, that our Commonwealth fusion, so fusion power, nuclear batteries, and that top one is, well, my favorite, where you're producing cement. So you're producing cement, you're doing natural gas pyrolysis, you have captured all the carbon, so there are no emissions, you're producing cement, which is also a battery. So imagine your wall where you're charging your phone, or parking lot where you're charging your car. Sounds like a fantasy land at this point, but hopefully that's the reality which is coming to us, and we need to work very hard, both at MIT, NTNU, and many, many other places in the world to bring that reality, because we really need those solutions. Thank you very much.